Is my mom all settled in at our place? Jake asked. He had decided to move his mom into our house without even asking me. On top of that, he left all the moving preparations for me to handle. Yes, she's settled in, I replied. I just sent all my things back to my parents' place too. What? Jake was shocked. He clearly hadn't expected me to move back to my parents' house. After his initial surprise, he let out a sarcastic laugh and looked down at me. Ashley, what are you talking about? You can't live on your own, he said mockingly. Jake had no idea about how determined I was. He didn't know how much I'd been earning lately. You spend all day staring at a screen on your phone or computer. You can't possibly manage on your own, he sneered. Well, I'll just have to show him, I thought. There was no way I'd rely on him anymore. I'd prove I could make it on my own. My name is Ashley. I'm 46 years old and have been married to Jake for about 20 years. We don't have any children. Jake works as an elite banker and is very detail-oriented, which may come from his personality or his job. He absolutely adores his 56-year-old mother. After Jake's father passed away 3 years ago, his mom lived alone in her house, which isn't too far from ours. She's been pressuring Jake, her only child, to have a grandchild. Jake always played the part of the perfect son, saying, "Yeah, we should have a child soon," whenever his mom brought it up, but when we were alone, he'd change his tone and say, "I only said that for mom. Having kids is such a hassle, I don't want them." So, here we are, childless. At our age, having kids would now be high risk, and over time, we gave up on the idea. Deep down, I didn't even want to have a child with Jake. There were reasons for that. Before we got married, I introduced myself to his mom, who said to me in a hushed tone, "Ashley, I don't think you're a good match for Jake. A banker's wife should be more, this won't last." But in front of Jake, she'd smile sweetly and say, "As long as Jake's happy, that's all that matters." Dealing with her two-faced nature was exhausting. It was the same when it came to the topic of children. "I want to see my grandchild soon. When will you have one?" she'd ask. Jake would reply, "I know, Mom, I'm sorry, but Ashley doesn't want kids," pinning the blame on me. Over time, I grew to dislike Jake for this. He was the one who didn't want children, yet he threw me under the bus. I wondered if it was because he loved his mom so much, he never stood up for me. "Ashley, why don't you want children?" his mom asked me directly. "Because having kids seems like too much work," I replied. She turned to Jake and said, "Well, Jake, she's such a cold person. Are you sure you want to stay with her?" "It's fine. If I weren't here, Ashley wouldn't survive," Jake said casually. "How kind of you, Jake," his mother replied. "Ashley, you should thank Jake properly," she added. "That's right," Jake chimed in. "Who do you think is supporting you?" They would laugh together, belittling me, but it wasn't just me, they also insulted my mother. "Ashley is such a terrible person. I bet the one who raised her is even worse," his mom would say. "Yeah, they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree," Jake would agree. Ironically, Jake was just like his mother, but hearing them talk badly about my mom hurt deeply. I should have defended her, but I didn't. At the time, I was too busy taking care of my father-in-law. My father-in-law had a rare condition that made his muscles stiffen over time. He couldn't eat or use the bathroom by himself. While I was there, I took care of everything for him. I didn't know if my mother-in-law helped when I wasn't around or if they hired a caregiver. Knowing her, they probably hired someone. I couldn't imagine her doing the work herself. If she had any compassion, she wouldn't have left all the caregiving to me, but she did, knowing I wouldn't speak up. Meanwhile, Jake kept feeding her stories about me, turning her further against me. I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't want to stay in this marriage. I wanted out. Looking back, I couldn't believe how much I had endured. There were so many other unpleasant memories, things I hadn't even mentioned yet. When my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law laughed and said, "Ah, it's finally over. We don't have to waste money anymore, and I can relax now." Those aren't the words you say about a husband you spent years with, especially when you didn't even take care of him yourself. I was the one who had been taking care of my father-in-law all by myself. When my mother-in-law made those comments about not wasting money, it made me think she must have hired a caretaker. Her selfish attitude made me not want to be called her daughter-in-law anymore. Recently, Jake told me she was showing signs of dementia. When I asked how bad it was, he said she was forgetting things more often. It sounded like the early stages of dementia, so I suggested she move into a nursing home where professionals could care for her. But Jake sighed in annoyance. "Don't you have any empathy? You live in our house, so you can take care of her here, that's all there is to it. What was he even talking about? I was busy too. All you do every day is housework. If that's the case, you can take care of my mother, he said dismissively. I replied, after everything she's put me through, do you really think I want to take care of her? You're such an unpleasant woman, he sneered. My mother will live here, and that's final, no objections. It was obvious Jake wasn't interested in my opinion. Since he was set on it, I decided I had no choice but to adapt. Understood, I said simply, and started preparing for my mother-in-law's move. I made several trips back and forth between her house and ours using my car. It wasn't a big car, so it took multiple trips. Her house was an hour's drive away, and the constant driving and paying for gas on my own was exhausting. Nobody helped me, but I managed everything myself. I could have asked a friend for help, but I knew Jake's pride wouldn't allow it. He'd probably be angry or embarrassed if people found out he was leaving all the work to me, so I ruled out asking anyone and did it alone. I guess I wasn't feeling quite myself after spending days moving my mother-in-law's belongings. Soon after, I started moving my own things to my parents' house. When they asked what had happened, I gave them a brief explanation. You've been through a lot, and you did well, they said, comforting me. Their encouragement gave me the strength to go back to finish what I had started. You don't have to go back, my parents told me, but I smiled and said, I can't leave things unfinished. Then I left their house with determination. When I got home, Jake was already there, and he was furious. Where have you been? You didn't even prepare dinner, he yelled. I'll do it now, I replied calmly. It's none of your business where I go. What kind of talk is that? Who do you think is providing for you? He snapped. Whenever Jake gets angry, he always throws out the same line, who do you think is providing for you? He used to say it to make me feel small, and in the beginning, it worked. I didn't know how to respond, but things are different now. Jake doesn't know I've been working, so to him, it probably just looks like I'm on my phone or computer all day. So, what do you want to eat? I asked, ignoring his shouting. That only made him angrier. I can't eat with you, it'll taste terrible, he snapped. I'll go eat outside. He stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. If this had happened before, I would have panicked, chased after him, and cried. I knew that's exactly what he wanted, but I wasn't the same person anymore. Instead, I thought, if I don't have to prepare dinner, then that's actually better. I grabbed my car keys to go get some food for myself, but when I opened the door, Jake was standing there. Why didn't you come after me? He demanded. I sighed, exhausted by Jake's behavior. You were the one who said a meal with me would be distasteful. That's why I didn't come after you, I explained, frowning as if to ask, don't you get it? Jake blurted out something incomprehensible about how I usually chased after him. We went back inside, but he kept sulking like a child. It was immature and embarrassing behavior for a 56-year-old man. When I stayed silent, Jake, still in a bad mood, broke the silence. Did you finish moving my mom? Jake had decided she would live with us without consulting me and dumped all the work of preparing the move on me. I'm done, I replied calmly. I've just finished sending all my stuff to my parents' house too. What? He said, clearly shocked. He probably didn't expect I'd actually move back to my parents. His reaction quickly turned into a smirk and a mocking laugh. What are you saying? You can't live on your own. You just sit around staring at your phone or computer all day. You can't survive without me. I looked at him calmly. No matter what happens, I won't rely on you. I'll prove I can live on my own. You don't know it, but I can. Don't lie, he sneered. What's the point of telling such an obvious lie? Why do you think you can live without me? Why do you think it's a lie? I shot back. Jake continued to look down on me. Listen, you've only been able to live because of me. If I'm not around, you can't survive a single day. You can't earn money. I wondered why he thought that but didn't bother to argue. Instead, I said, even if I explained, you wouldn't believe me. Either way, I'm going back to my parents' house. If you're going back, we should just divorce, he snapped. Don't come crying back later. Do whatever you want, but I'll see you regretting this in less than 3 days. Fine, that's okay, I said, pulling out the divorce papers I had prepared. Sign here. Jake, sneering and full of arrogance, signed them with a smug grin. I glared at him, grabbed the papers, and left. I got in my car and drove to my parents' house. Jake seemed stunned that I actually went through with it. He tried calling me several times, but I ignored every call. After about 2 days of silence since I went back to my parents' house, Jake's phone call started again. At first, I didn't answer because I thought he might be abusive, but then he left a voicemail. "Ashley, are you angry? I'll forgive you, so come back." That was it. He said he'd forgive me, but he's the one who suggested the divorce, not me. If anything, I should be the one to forgive him, not the other way around. Of course, I wasn't about to forgive him. As this feeling of anger built up inside me, I decided to answer the next call. But for a while, I didn't hear from Jake again. I thought he had given up. However, 2 weeks after his voicemail, the phone rang again. "Hello, Ashley," Jake said. When I answered, he was crying. I couldn't believe a grown man was sobbing, but I stayed silent. Then I heard a strange scream from behind him. Immediately, Jake yelled, "Stop it, Mom." I realized then that his mother's dementia had gotten worse, and he couldn't handle it anymore. "Ashley, it's my fault, please come back," he begged. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "I left, that's why you can come back." "I don't want to come back," I added firmly. "Please, I can't handle my mother's dementia and work at the same time. You must be struggling without my money." "I'm not struggling, and I don't want your money," I replied. "We're a couple, right? Couples help each other," Jake said, trying to convince me. "Yes, couples help each other, but we're strangers now," I replied coldly. "What are you talking about?" he said, panicked. "I'm in so much trouble." "But when I was miserable, you didn't help me, did you?" I shot back. "You were laughing with your mom." "Okay, got it," Jake said. "Finally, I'll pay you. How much do you want?" "If you take care of my mom, I'll pay you. Will you come back then?" "What do you think I am?" I replied. "Besides, I earn more than you." Jake was stunned. "What?" I hadn't told him before, because he never approved of me working. I remembered when I mentioned wanting to get a part-time job, and he got furious, saying, "Women should only do housework. It's shameful to work outside. People will think I don't earn enough." So, because of his pride, I had to work secretly. I found ways to earn money without him knowing. "What job were you doing behind my back?" Jake demanded. "Stock trading," I answered. "A friend taught me, and I became successful. Now I'm a professional trader, so don't worry, I can live on my own." "Please come back," Jake pleaded again. "Why don't you take care of your beloved mother yourself?" I asked. "Besides, you're the one who suggested the divorce. You actually filed for divorce? You thought I wouldn't?" Jake said. "I went to file it right away. If you have something to say, please do it through a lawyer," I responded coldly. Jake kept repeating, "I didn't really mean to divorce you. Please come back." "I'm busy," I said, and hung up. Then, I contacted a friend to introduce me to a lawyer. He agreed to represent me right away, and from then on, all communication with Jake was done through the lawyer. It took some time, but I managed to finalize the divorce. I later heard from the lawyer that my mother-in-law's wandering habit had worsened. She was sneaking out at night and causing trouble at convenience stores, stealing food. She was banned from many places. At home, she was smearing filth on the walls and eating things she shouldn't, making a huge mess. On top of that, her loud screams had caused complaints from neighbors, and the police were often called. Despite this, Jake didn't want to use day services for her because of his ridiculous pride. He said, "People might think I'm a bad son if I leave my mother to a day service. It's shameful. A capable man like me shouldn't need help. It could all be solved if Ashley just came back." I heard that Jake, who used to rely on me for everything, was now a total mess. He was thin with hollow eyes, probably from lack of sleep. He looked so bad that even the neighbors were talking about it. When I heard that, I thought, it serves him right, but I didn't say it out loud. I just thanked the lawyer. As for me, I moved to the top floor of a tower apartment with my parents. Jake had always belittled them, but now I was really glad to be living in a nice place with them, finally free. I was spending happy days enjoying the beautiful scenery every day.